Did you enjoy your popcorn and your soda on Sunday night? I hope you took time to enjoy it. Hope you took time to sit down and eat it and watch a movie maybe and get a salty mouth and then quench your thirst. And on Sunday we talked about being salty and bright. Jesus gave us our identity in the Sermon on the Mount. He said that he called us to be the salt of the earth and to be the light of the world. And so we wanted to talk about what it meant to be salty and bright. And so I had a couple thoughts that I had to leave out of that message and that I just wanted to mention today. Just in this idea of salt being a preservative, of salt bringing out the flavor of something, of salt creating thirst, which that's why we gave you that popcorn, to create some thirst and remind you that as you live for Christ, that's supposed to produce a thirst within the world to know who Jesus is. That as you live these attributes of salt, that it's your identity to do those things, and that's who God has called you to be. And so I wanted to talk about one thing we talked about, is that salt is an activator. Salt is no good on its own. It's not productive by itself. But when it's put on another ingredient, it activates it and it brings the flavor out of it. In a sense, it's a fertilizer. It's used in fertilizer today. It was historically, and it brings nutrients to the soil. It activates a flavor and it brings something out that wasn't there. The message in Matthew 5:13, it says, you are that as the salt of the earth, you're called to bring out the God flavors of the earth. And so in order to bring out those God flavors, today I wanted to talk about being a good salt shaker. How many of you have ever had a salt shaker that eventually you just threw away because the salt wasn't the problem, the shaker was the problem, and maybe it had too many holes in the top, or maybe too few holes in the top? If salt isn't, the purpose of salt isn't to gather it and to hoard it. The purpose of salt is to disperse it properly. And so in order for that to happen, how can we be great salt shakers? How can we make sure that when we apply, when we share the word of God, when we are the salt of the earth, when we apply that salt, that it comes out right? That it comes out right. And I think there's a lot of ways that can be happen. I think some things can be too salty and some things cannot be salty enough. I think sometimes a lot of our Christianese just make us taste too salty, and people aren't actually getting a good flavor. They're just kind of maybe sickened by religion or whatever. I was talking with a couple college students this week, and I said, how could we as a church reach college students? And the first thing they said was, don't stand on the street corner with a sign. We're not going to listen. All right. So, it was interesting. Why? What's that? That's too salty. Is the issue the message? No, the issue is the approach. And so, anyhow, the point that I'm trying to get at is this. We want to look for ways to properly apply the Word of God to people's life, that they can taste the God flavors of the world. And so as I was thinking about this, I was thinking about the second part of the verse, which says, you are the light of the world. The city on a hill can't be hidden, and you don't light a lamp and hold it under a bowl. Instead, you put it on a stand, and it gives light to the whole house. And we're called to let our light shine before men, Matthew 5:13 through 16. And so in that idea, that we're called to be a light, we're called to have a public faith, we're called to shine the light. What does it really mean to shine the light? As Christians, we're supposed to look like Christ. Philippians has this message that says, Philippians 2:14 says, shine like stars in the universe as you hold out the word of life. Shine like stars in the universe as you hold out the word of life. You know what's interesting? Sometimes we think it's too dark for light to shine. That it's just too dark for any light to shine. There's no hope. Can it be too dark for us to be a light? Well, interestingly, I think that the darker it is, the more important it is for us to shine the light. And the darker it is, the more distinguished the light is. And so in this verse it says, you shine like stars as you hold out the word of life. You think about stars, you look up at the sky, and we call them all stars, but some are stars and some are planets. You look up at the moon, and the moon, it actually has no light value of itself. What does it do? It reflects the sun. 20 years ago this summer, we were, one of my best friends got married, and Sean and Monica got married, and then on their wedding night, we waited until late at night, and we were just young and stupid, and we went to their apartment and we threw rocks at their window, and we thought we were funny, but it didn't work, and they just ignored us. And then we're like, what are we gonna do? So we're gonna go four-wheeling. So we took the truck and we headed out into the woods in Yale Forest, and we're out on a dirt road in the middle of nowhere, and we get a blowout at midnight on a Saturday night. 20 years ago, guess what you didn't have in your pocket? A cell phone. No cell phone. And on that night, it was really dark, so we didn't have a cell phone. Back then, you used to keep a flashlight in your glove box. Guess what? The batteries were dead. Just could barely get any light out of it. Went to change the tire. The tire iron was missing. What did we have to do? We're out in the middle of the woods on a dirt road. We're up in the far side of Ashford. There's no house for a mile. What do we have to do? We gotta walk in the middle of the night to try and knock on a door to ask for a tire iron so we can change our tire. We had a spare tire, just no tire iron, and it was pitch black. You know what we could have used a little bit of that night? A little reflection from the moon, but no, there was no moon that night. It was dark. We're walking like this in the woods just so we don't poke our eyes out, just to feel for branches so we can stay on the path. And you know what? The darker it is, the more helpful a little bit of light would have been. We're called to shine like stars in the universe. And so don't be afraid of how dark it is. Don't be afraid if darkness doesn't want to see the light. Be a reflector of God. I think that's how we get the salt shaker to be just right, is that we look like God. What, perfect? No, we're not trying to be hypocrites and claim to be perfect. We're not trying to put the attention on our actions. We're just trying to be like God, and that will create a reflection. Not a reflection that is silent, but a reflection that holds out the word of life and says, man, I love God, why don't you give him a try? Psalm 34, verse 8, I think, says, taste and see that the Lord is good. That's what we're trying to do as Salt and Light. We're trying to say, taste and see that the Lord is good. So hopefully this encourages you, this message. And you know what we want to do? We want to be great salt shakers, because salt's no good in the glass jar. It's good when it's applied. When it's applied to your steak and your popcorn and your French fries and, to your corn on the cob and to your mashed potatoes. So let's not leave the salt in the shaker. Let's let it be applied to the world, that the world could taste God and see how good he is. God bless you. Thanks for listening. If you thought this was good, share it. Leave a comment below. And thank you for listening. God bless you. And keep growing.